The dust of Hollow Rock Square clung to Issa's bare feet as she stood bound to the livestock post, her wrists chafed raw by coarse rope. The first lash had already torn through her blouse, a sharp sting blooming across her back. Her long braid, once her mother's pride, now dragged in the dirt, heavy with shame the town had heaped upon her. She was no criminal, yet here she stood, punished for a single defiant word. No. She had refused Ezra Pike, the valley's wealthiest trader, a man whose offer of 5 acres and 2 mules to her father was meant to seal her fate. But Issa, with her fierce eyes and unyielding heart, had said no, loudly, publicly, in a town that valued obedience over spirit. The crowd gathered not to defend her, but to witness her humiliation, their murmurs blending with the dry wind. "This is the price of dishonor," the sheriff declared, his voice firm but his gaze averted, unable to meet the fire in her eyes. From the edge of the square, a figure watched in silence. Taki, a Lakota brave cloaked in buckskin, stood with arms crossed, his storm cloud eyes tracing every moment of her pain. Known to the townsfolk as a trapper or ghost, he was a shadow they dismissed. As the second lash bit deeper, drawing blood that stained Issa's teeth as she bit her lip, Taki remained still, his face carved stone. When her knees buckled on the third lash, he didn't flinch, but his hands tightened, unseen by the crowd. Issa caught his gaze through the haze of pain, a fleeting moment where she felt seen, not as a disgrace but as something unbroken. By the fourth lash, her body sagged against the post, pride and cloth torn alike. The sheriff hesitated as a voice muttered, "That's enough." But the elders waved him on. 7 lashes, 1 for each day she'd delayed her father's honor. Taki turned before the 5th landed, slipping into the forest like smoke, his silence louder than the whip's crack. No one noticed the flicker in his eyes, except Issa, who clung to that glimpse as her world blurred. That night, under a moonless sky, Issa fled. Her back burned, her blouse stuck to torn flesh, and each barefoot step was a prayer she wasn't sure would be answered. She hadn't planned to run, no food, no coat, no shoes. But when her father turned away, muttering, "You brought this on yourself," she knew Hollow Rock was no longer home. The forest swallowed her, its whispers of wind and coyote howls both threat and promise. Pain won by dawn, and she collapsed into a hollow between roots, pressing her face to the earth, willing herself to vanish. Time blurred, hours or days, she couldn't tell. Dreams of whips and her mother's voice mingled with fevered haze. Then a soft scrape of leather and the crackle of a fire broke the silence. She woke to see Taki sitting cross-legged by a small blaze, stirring a pot that smelled of wild herbs and bark. He didn't look at her, but his awareness was a presence as tangible as the flames. "You shouldn't be alive," he said, his voice low, almost a thought. "But you are." Issa tried to sit up, pain surging so sharply she cried out. In a breath, Taki was beside her, a damp cloth in hand, the scent of pine and sage on his skin. "Lie still," he said, easing her down. "The wounds are deep. Some may scar." "Why?" Her voice was raw, barely a whisper. "Why did you bring me here?" He met her eyes, his gaze holding no pity, only recognition. "Because you didn't scream. Because they broke your skin but not your spirit." Shame and defiance warred within her, but she looked away, unable to hold his stare. Taki returned to the fire, silent again. In that quiet, Issa felt something, knew not judgment but space. A silence that whispered, "You are not alone." "Where are you going?" she asked later, her voice small. He didn't answer at first, checking the trail. Then, "They will come." Fear crept into her bones. Of course, the town wouldn't let her go, not after defying Pike, shaming the sheriff, and disobeying her father. She was a stain to be scrubbed out. "You should have left me," she whispered. Taki didn't flinch. "I don't leave what I've chosen to protect." The words landed like a stone in her chest, too heavy to carry. No one had ever spoken to her like that. Not her father, not her neighbors, not even her mother when alive. She wanted to ask why, how long he'd watched, what he saw in her. But his stance told her questions weren't his way. So she offered her only truth. "I don't know how to survive out here." He turned toward the trees, his silhouette sharp against the dawn. "Then learn." Days bled into nights. Hunger screamed louder than her wounds, but pride was useless now. Taki handed her a bowl of stew, rabbit, roots, herbs, watching with unreadable eyes as she ate, each bite tethering her to life. He didn't ask about the town, the whipping, or why she'd run. Instead, he taught her how to bind wounds with moss, to listen to the wind, to step without sound. He showed her once, then stepped back, letting her fail, letting her earn it. One morning, smoke rose from the south, not their fire, but her family's cabin, burned to ash. "They're erasing me," Issa said, numbness replacing system. Our Grok 3 built by XAI erase her existence." Taki knelt beside her, stirring the fire. "That's what cowards do. They fear what they cannot own." Issa's eyes burned, not with tears, but with a fire of her own. "I wasn't theirs to begin with." "They believed you were," Taki said, unrolling a piece of hide. Inside was a carved pendant, rough but beautiful, etched with unfamiliar lines. "Your name," he said, "or the one I'd give you if you want a new one." She traced the lines, her throat tightening. "What does it mean?" "One who walks through fire and lives." The words shattered something in her, not painfully but beautifully, like a shell cracking to reveal something stronger beneath. "You don't know me," she whispered. "Not really." "I know what they did," Taki replied. "And I know you didn't let them win." Silence settled between them, deep and rooting like the earth itself. When she spoke again, her voice was clear. "Issa is gone. Let her burn with the house." Taki nodded. "Then we begin again." Hope flickered within her, fragile but real. The ashes of her old name scattered, and something new took shape. The thunder of hooves broke the dawn, steady and deliberate. Taki's eyes sharpened, his hand on his bow as he motioned Issa to hide behind the rocks. "Don't speak. Don't move unless I tell you." 3 men emerged on the trail, Pike's hired hands, their rifles slung across their backs, faces familiar from the jeering crowd at her whipping. They scanned the trees, one dismounting to touch the earth Taki had disturbed. "She's alive," he grunted. "Tracks go up." The leader grinned. Then let's smoke her out. That's savage. Won't get far. Isa's heart pounded, her fingers digging into the dirt. She was a ghost to them now, a thing to be hunted. Taki moved like a shadow, circling behind the rocks, silent as frost. He returned with a wrapped bundle, handing her a short, sharp knife. If they find you, don't run. Use this, not for them, for yourself. Your death belongs to you, not them. Her blood ran cold, but defiance surged. I'm not dying for them, she said, gripping the knife. Not again. Taki's gaze held respect. Then stay quiet. I'll lead them the other way. Alone? She asked. Always, he replied, slipping down the ridge like smoke, drawing danger to himself. Isa lay still, the knife pressed to her chest, her breath measured. The hoofbeats shifted, chasing Taki's false trail. Night fell, the forest holding its breath. Just before dawn, a glow appeared on the eastern ridge. Flames, smoke curling upward. A trap, a distraction, or a sign Taki was alive. Isa moved, before thought, slipping down the slope, pain a dull roar against her fear. She reached the clearing and froze. No riders, just a dying fire. And Taki crouched, blood on his hands, 2 of Pike's men down, 1 unconscious, 1 still. Are you hurt? She asked, throat tight. He shook his head. They followed, I let them. The 3rd ran. She looked at the bodies, firelight flickering on their faces. You could have killed them all. Didn't need to, Taki said, wiping his blade. Pain is louder than death. The one who ran will carry the story. Let them fear the shadows. They'll come again, she whispered. Let them, he said. Next time, you'll stand beside me. She didn't doubt she could. Taki's presence was a quiet oath, not spoken but lived. Through the sage he left by her pillow, the hide he wrapped around her bleeding hands. One night by a creek she asked, have you ever lost something you didn't know how to live without? After a long silence he said, my sister. They took her when I was 10. I never saw her again. Isa placed her hand over his, the first time she touched him by choice. His hand stayed still, the creek singing between them. I wasn't meant to be someone's bride, she said softly. No, Taki replied. You were meant to be someone's legend. In his eyes, she saw herself. Not the girl at the post, but a woman forged by flame. She believed him. Not because she wanted to, but because she saw it too. They moved deeper into the forest where trees grew ancient and paths vanished. Isa healed, her body finding a new rhythm. She learned to bind wounds, to listen to the wind, to move silently. Taki showed her once, then let her earn it. She did, growing stronger daily, not because she was saved, but because she rebuilt herself. The decision to return wasn't born of fury, but of quiet resolve. Over rabbit bones she'd cleaned, furs she'd stretched, the pendant against her skin. I'm going back, she told Taki, packing herbs. He nodded. Then I go with you. Not to fight, she said. Not yet. No, he agreed. To walk beside you. Hollow Rock hadn't changed. Crooked signs, gossiping townsfolk, the same square where her blood stained the post, but the air shifted when she stepped into the light. The baker dropped his dough, A woman clutched her child. The sheriff paled. Isa walked to the general store, leaving a satchel of medicinal roots. For Martha's cough, Annie's fever, she said clearly. Boil it 3 times daily. The storekeeper nodded, stunned. Isa passed Pike's office without a glance, his shadow moving behind curtains. Word spread by dusk. Children peeked, men whispered, women stared. No one dared speak against her. Taki stood at the square's edge, his silence a roar. Isa returned to the ridge before nightfall, the town's fear chasing her steps. They're afraid, she said by the fire. Good, Taki replied. They didn't stop me because they can't, she said, tracing her pendant. It's not about revenge, it's about being seen. They saw you, Taki said. No, she corrected. They saw who they made. Next, they'll see who I became. Dawn brought Pike's final play, 3 men, knives drawn, waiting. By the river bend where Isa gathered roots, they thought her alone, vulnerable. She wasn't. When a branch snapped, she pivoted, knife ready, stance low. The first man lunged. She sliced his forearm. The second grabbed for her. She broke free with an elbow to his ribs. Pain flared, but it didn't stop her. The third drew a pistol. Then Taki appeared, arrow through the man's hand. The pistol fell. The man screamed. Tell Pike, Isa said, voice steady. Next time he sends men, they won't leave breathing. Taki stepped forward. It ends when you stop trying to own what was never yours. The men retreated, bleeding, dragging each other away. Isa stood over blood-streaked grass, not afraid, but alive with directed fury. She washed in the river, the red flowing downstream. I didn't think I'd fight again, she said. But you did, Taki said. Not because I'm brave, she added. Because I had no choice. Bravery is doing it anyway, he said, kneeling beside her. He'll keep coming, she whispered. Then we'll keep standing, Taki replied. Together. That night they lay under the stars, shoulders brushing, no weapons needed. They had survived the worst. What lay ahead, they'd face as equals. 2 souls rebuilt by silence, pain, and choice. Years later, a carved stone stood near the river, its markings unreadable to most. Locals whispered of the woman whipped in the square, who vanished and returned as legend. They said she built a home beyond the trees of clay and strength, with a quiet man whose eyes could stop storms. Children found gifts, herbs, trinkets, feathers, and spoke of her. She walks like the ground won't betray her, one girl said. No one laughed. The town had changed. The sheriff retired. The whipping post burned in secret. Pike's land was sold, his power dimmed by rumors. Isa's justice wasn't vengeance but survival, dignity sharper than any knife. In her cabin, she hung Taki's pendant by the door. Above it etched Wika Wapi, woman who rises like stars. Not worshipped, not feared, but refusing to be crushed. Her story lived in firelight, in pauses between songs, a map for those needing to rise. The trees felt calmer, safer, knowing her steps. Taki aged beside her, seeking only their shared silence, land, and truth. In their final days, watching sunsets, she'd whisper, They tried to take everything. And still, he'd answer, "You became everything."